The stars burned cold in the contested reaches, a stretch of space where no government held true power. Here in the darkness between civilized systems, Commander Zarketh had built his reputation on the wreckage of those who dared challenge him. His flagship, the Worldbreaker, cut through the void like a blade. Around it, 17 warships maintained perfect formation. Each vessel bore the mark of the Crethean hegemony, a crimson fist against black armor. For 300 years, Zarketh had commanded these fleets. For 300 years, he had never known defeat. The bridge of the Worldbreaker hummed with quiet efficiency. Dozens of officers attended their stations, their gray skin pale in the blue light of holographic displays. Zarketh stood at the center, his forearms crossed behind his back, his ridge-crowned head tilted slightly as he studied the tactical map. "Commander," his tactical officer spoke, her voice carrying the clicking accent of High Crethean. "We have detected a vessel. Single ship moving through Sector 7. Zarketh's eyes narrowed. Sector 7 was neutral territory, but ships that traveled alone here usually had something to hide. Pirates, smugglers, sometimes rebels thinking they could slip past his patrols. "Identify," he ordered. The tactical officer's fingers danced across her console. Data streams flickered in the air. "The signature is unusual, Commander. The vessel identifies itself as the UESV Perseverance. Registry indicates human origin." A ripple of interest passed through the bridge crew. Humans, the newest species to reach the stars. Zarketh had read the reports from the outer colonies. A young race, barely 200 years into space travel, primitive by galactic standards. They had established a handful of settlements, traded cautiously with neighboring systems, and mostly kept to themselves. "Human," Zarketh repeated, tasting the word. "What is their heading?" "They appear to be on a direct course through the reaches, Commander. Speed suggests they intend to cross into hegemony space within 6 hours." Zarketh's mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement. "Alone? One ship?" "Yes, Commander. Scans indicate it is a cargo-class vessel, approximately 400 meters in length, medium power output. No escort." This was almost insulting. The contested reaches were not a place for cargo ships. Every species in the galaxy knew this. Either these humans were incredibly foolish, or they simply did not understand the danger they had wandered into. "Open a channel," Zarketh commanded. "Let us educate them." The communications officer worked quickly. After a moment, she nodded. "Channel open, Commander." Zarketh stepped forward, his image being transmitted across the void. He drew himself up to his full height, allowing his forearms to spread wide in a display of dominance. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of authority. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the domain of Commander Zarketh of the Crethean hegemony. This space is under my protection. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction." He had given this speech hundreds of times. Usually it ended quickly. Ships surrendered, crews were processed, cargo was inspected. Sometimes they found contraband. Sometimes they found nothing. Either way, his reputation grew. Another ship. Another victory without firing a shot. The silence stretched longer than usual. Zarketh waited, patient as stone. Then the communication console chimed. "An incoming transmission. Put it on screen," he ordered. The main view screen flickered. The image that appeared showed the bridge of the human vessel. It was smaller than his own command center, with fewer stations and simpler technology. At the center stood a human female, her dark hair pulled back, her uniform a deep blue. She looked directly at the camera with brown eyes that showed no fear. "Commander Zarketh," she said, her voice calm and measured. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Vessel Perseverance. We are on a peaceful transit through this region, bound for the Caltheron system. We mean no disrespect to your authority, but we are traveling through neutral space, which gives you no legal claim to board us." Zarketh felt his secondary hearts quicken slightly. This human knew galactic law. More than that, she had used it to refuse him directly. No stammering, no begging. Just a simple statement of fact. His officers shifted uncomfortably. They recognized this moment. It was the moment before violence. "Captain Chen," Zarketh replied, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. "Legal claims are for those who have the power to enforce them. You are alone. You are in my territory, neutral or not. I have 17 warships. You will comply or you will be destroyed. There is no third option." He expected her to reconsider. To show fear, to make some desperate plea. Instead, Captain Chen smiled slightly. Commander, I understand you have an impressive record. 300 years of victories, 47 star systems brought under hegemony control. You are by all accounts a brilliant military leader. Zarketh said nothing. Flattery was just another form of begging. However, Chen continued, we will not be powering down our engines. We will continue on our current course. If you choose to fire upon us, that is your decision. But I think you should know that such an action would be a mistake. The bridge fell silent. Even the background hum of systems seemed to quiet. No one spoke to Commander Zarketh this way. No one. A mistake, Zarketh repeated slowly. You believe your cargo ship can stand against the world breaker? I believe, Chen said carefully, that you should think carefully before committing to an action you might regret. We are not your enemy, Commander. We have no interest in conflict. But if you insist on one, we are prepared to defend ourselves. Zarketh's mandibles ground together. This human was either bluffing or insane, possibly both. Either way, he had made his ultimatum. To back down now would show weakness. Word would spread. Other ships would test him. His reputation would crack. Very well, Captain Chen, you have made your choice. Tactical, prepare a warning shot. Target their engines. Low power. Let us show them what real weapons can do. His tactical officer nodded sharply. Targeting solution locked, Commander. Firing in 3, 2, 1, firing. A lance of crimson energy leaped from the Worldbreaker's forward batteries. It crossed the distance between ships in less than a second. Enough power to punch through most civilian shields and disable any engine system. The shot struck the Perseverance, dead center on its aft section, and nothing happened. The human ships' shields flared briefly with absorbed energy, then settled back to their normal state. No damage, no disruption. The Perseverance continued on its course as if it had merely passed through a patch of stellar wind. Tactical, Zarketh said slowly. Report. His tactical officer stared at her console, her expression confused. Commander, the shot was clean.
Full contact.
But their shields, they absorbed the entire blast. No penetration. No feedback. The energy just disappeared. Impossible. Scan their shield systems. More data flickered across the displays. Zarketh watched as his crew worked frantically, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Commander, his science officer called out, his voice uncertain. The shield configuration is unlike anything in our database. The frequency rotation is too fast. The power distribution is, I do not understand it. It should not be possible with their technology level. Zarketh stared at the view screen. Captain Chen still stood on her bridge, her expression unchanged. She had not even flinched when the shot hit. Captain, Zarketh said carefully, your shields are impressive. But one ship cannot stand against 17. This is your final chance. Surrender now. Chen tilted her head slightly. Commander, I told you this would be a mistake. You have just fired on a vessel traveling under peaceful transit. You have violated 3 separate galactic conventions. And you have demonstrated that you are willing to use force against those who refuse to submit to illegal demands. Spare me the legal lecture, human. Your shields will not save you from sustained fire. Perhaps not, Chen agreed. But I wonder, Commander, in 300 years, have you ever asked yourself why you have never been truly challenged? Why every battle has been so easy? Zarketh felt a strange sensation in his chest, something like unease. What are you implying? I am implying that maybe, just maybe, you have never faced an enemy that was actually trying to test you. Until now. Chen leaned forward slightly. This is your last chance, Commander. Continue on this path and you will learn something new today. I promise you that. The threat hung in the air between them. Zarketh felt the eyes of his crew upon him. Waiting, watching. He had come too far to back down. He had built everything on strength, on the absolute certainty of victory. Tactical, he said quietly. Prepare full squadron attack. All ships. Concentrate fire on that vessel. I want to see exactly what their shields can handle. His tactical officer hesitated for just a moment, then obeyed. Across the fleet, 17 warships adjusted their positions. Weapons powered up, targeting systems locked on. On the view screen, Captain Chen nodded slowly as if she had expected this. So be it, Commander. But remember, you were warned. The transmission ended. Zarketh stood in the silence that followed, studying the small human vessel on his tactical display. It hung there in space, alone against his entire fleet. No reinforcements, no escape route. Just that single ship and whatever secrets it carried. For the first time in 300 years, Commander Zarketh felt something he had almost forgotten. A small whisper of doubt in the back of his mind, asking a question he had never considered. What if he was wrong? "All ships report ready, Commander," his tactical officer announced. Zarketh pushed the doubt aside. He had not built his legend on hesitation. "Fire," he commanded. The void erupted with light as 17 warships opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of energy beams converged on the Perseverance, enough firepower to shatter a small moon. The human ship disappeared in a blinding sphere of unleashed destruction, and when the light faded, it was still there. The shields glowed bright blue, energy cascading across their surface like water over glass, but they held. The Perseverance had not moved, had not even tried to evade. It had simply taken the full might of his fleet and absorbed it. Zarketh stared at the display, his mind racing. This was not possible. This was not how the universe worked. Small ships did not survive fleet bombardments. Primitive species did not possess shields that could withstand concentrated fire from hegemony weapons. "Commander," his sensor officer called out, his voice tight with fear. "I am detecting a massive power spike from the human vessel. They are charging something. Energy readings are climbing rapidly." Zarketh felt his blood run cold. Evasive maneuvers. All ships scatter pattern Delta now. But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. Whatever the humans had planned, it had already begun. The Perseverance hung in space before them, shields still glowing, engines still running, and for the first time in 300 years, Commander Zarketh understood what it meant to face an unknown enemy. The game had changed. The rules he had lived by no longer applied, and somewhere in the depths of space, one human vessel had just rewritten the future of galactic warfare. The Worldbreaker's bridge descended into controlled chaos. Officers shouted readings while alarms chimed warnings across multiple systems. Zarketh stood at the center of it all, watching the tactical display with eyes that had seen 3 centuries of battle, but nothing like this. The human vessel's energy signature had spiked to levels that should have torn it apart. Yet it remained intact, hovering in space like a predator deciding whether to strike. "Report," Zarketh barked. His science officer worked frantically at his console. "Commander, the energy readings are stabilizing. Whatever they were charging appears to be online now, but I cannot determine its purpose. The signature does not match any known weapon system. Could it be a reactor overload? A self-destruct? Negative, Commander. Too controlled. Too precise. This is intentional." Zarketh's tactical display showed his fleet scattered across several thousand kilometers. The maneuver had been executed perfectly, but now his ships were out of position, vulnerable. He needed to regroup and reassess. "All ships, reform on the Worldbreaker. Maintain maximum defensive spacing. Keep shields at full power." As his fleet moved to comply, the Perseverance remained motionless, just watching, waiting. The communication console chimed. Captain Chen's face reappeared on the view screen. Behind her, Zarketh could now see more of her bridge. Human crew members worked at their stations with calm efficiency. No panic, no fear. They had just taken a full fleet bombardment and seemed completely unfazed. "Commander Zarketh," Chen said evenly, "I hope you are beginning to understand the situation." "What I understand," Zarketh replied, fighting to keep his voice steady, "is that you have impressive defensive capabilities, but defense alone does not win battles." "True," Chen acknowledged, "but we are not trying to win a battle, Commander. We are trying to avoid one. However, since you seem determined to test us, I think it is time we showed you what humanity brings to the galaxy." She gestured to someone off-screen. A moment later, new data began flooding Zarketh's sensor systems. Technical specifications, shield configurations, energy distribution patterns. Everything his science teams would have spent weeks trying to determine was simply being handed to them. "As you can see," Chen continued, "our shields operate on principles your science has not yet discovered. We are sharing this data as a gesture of good faith, to help you understand what you are facing." Zarketh's science officer stared at the incoming information, his eyes widening. "Commander, this is incredible. Their shield system uses quantum entanglement to distribute energy across multiple dimensional phases. It is not just absorbing damage, it is redirecting it into pocket dimensions where it dissipates harmlessly. Can we replicate it? Not without fundamental advances in our understanding of quantum mechanics. This technology is decades, perhaps centuries, beyond our current capabilities. Zarketh felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not quite fear, but something close. Respect, perhaps. A recognition that he had made a serious miscalculation. "Captain Chen," he said carefully, "if you possess such advanced technology, why have humans kept to themselves? Why not announce your capabilities to the galaxy?" Chen smiled slightly. "Because, Commander, we are not interested in conquest or intimidation. We wanted to understand the galaxy before we fully entered it. We have spent 50 years watching, learning, studying every species we encountered. We know your customs, your laws, your histories. We know you, Commander Zarketh. You have been spying on us. We have been learning. There is a difference. And what we learned is that the galaxy operates on principles of strength and dominance. Species respect power above all else. So before we could truly join the galactic community, we needed to demonstrate that humanity has power, that we cannot be dismissed or conquered or intimidated." Zarketh's mandibles ground together. "So this is a demonstration. You baited me into attacking you. You attacked of your own volition, Commander. We simply refused to submit to illegal demands. But yes, we knew someone like you would test us eventually. Better to face that test on our terms. And if I had not attacked, then we would have continued on our way and tried again another day with someone else. But your reputation made you the ideal candidate, the undefeated Commander Zarketh. If humanity can stand against you, the galaxy will take notice." Zarketh felt anger flare in his chest. He had been manipulated, used as a prop in humanity's grand entrance to galactic society. But beneath the anger was something else. Curiosity. This Captain Chen had outmaneuvered him before the first shot was fired. She had turned his own reputation into a weapon against him. It was brilliant and infuriating. "You have made your point, Captain. Your shields are impressive, but I did not survive 300 years by accepting defeat after one exchange. All ships prepare for elite squadron deployment. Target the human vessel with precision strikes. Find the weak points in those shields." Chen's expression did not change. "Commander, please reconsider. We do not want to damage your ships. My ships can handle themselves, can they?" Before Zarketh could respond, 6 of his fastest attack cruisers broke formation. These were his elite units commanded by his best officers. They moved with practiced precision, vectoring in from multiple angles. Their weapons were designed for armor penetration, capable of punching through the heaviest defenses. The cruisers opened fire in a coordinated pattern, each shot timed to strike a different section of the Perseverance's shield simultaneously. It was a technique Zarketh had perfected over centuries, designed to overwhelm shield harmonics and create cascade failures. The human ship's shields flared bright as each impact hit. For a moment it seemed like the strategy was working. The shield frequency began to fluctuate. Then the Perseverance moved. It was not a fast movement by any means. The ship simply rotated slowly on its axis, adjusting its shield facing by a few degrees. But that small movement changed everything. The carefully coordinated strike pattern hit shields that were no longer in the expected positions. The timing was thrown off. The cascade effect never materialized. "Again," Zarketh commanded. "Adjust firing solutions and engage." The elite cruisers repositioned and fired again. This time the Perseverance made no visible movement. But Zarketh's tactical display showed something impossible. The shield frequency had changed. Just slightly, just enough to render the precision strikes ineffective. "How did they know our firing patterns?" his tactical officer demanded. "They are adapting," Zarketh said quietly. "They are studying our tactics in real time and adjusting their defenses." He watched as his elite squadron made 3 more attack runs. Each time the human ship adapted. Sometimes it moved. Sometimes it adjusted shield frequencies. Once it released a burst of charged particles that scattered the incoming fire harmlessly into space. And through it all, the Perseverance never counterattacked. "Commander," his communications officer called out, "Captain Chen is hailing us again." "Put her on screen." Chen appeared looking completely composed. "Commander, your elite pilots are very skilled, but they are using tactics designed to fight enemies who do not learn from their mistakes. We have spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves. We learned very quickly that any tactic used more than once becomes predictable." 10,000 years? Zarketh repeated. "Humanity has only been in space for 200 years. In space, yes, but we have been at war with each other for almost our entire recorded history. Every human nation, every culture, every generation has refined the art of combat. We have fought wars with sticks and stones. We have fought wars with arrows and swords. We have fought wars with guns and bombs and nuclear weapons. And through it all, we learned one fundamental truth. The side that adapts fastest wins. Zarketh felt a chill run down his spine. He had read reports about humanity's violent history, but hearing Chen describe it so matter-of-factly drove the point home. These were a people forged in constant conflict, who had turned warfare into a science. Most species in the galaxy, Chen continued, achieved spaceflight through cooperation. They worked together, pooled resources, focused on advancement rather than conflict. That is admirable. But it also means they have limited experience with genuine warfare. You, Commander, have 300 years of victories. But those victories were against enemies who did not truly know how to fight. And you do? We do. But more importantly, we also know when not to fight. We could have destroyed your elite squadron just now. Our weapon systems have been locked on them since they broke formation. But we did not fire because we are not here to make enemies. We are here to make a point. On his tactical display, Zarketh saw targeting locks appear on all 6 of his elite cruisers. Perfect firing solutions that his own sensors had somehow missed. If the humans had fired, his best ships would have been crippled or destroyed. He had been outplayed at every step. Recall the elite squadron, he ordered quietly. All ships hold position. His officers complied, though he could see confusion and fear in their expressions. Commander Zarketh did not retreat. Commander Zarketh did not back down, until now. Captain Chen, he said, his voice heavy, what do you want? To talk, Commander. Just to talk. You are a legend in this part of space. Your opinion matters. Your endorsement would mean something. We would like to discuss humanity's entry into the galactic community, and we would like you to understand why we would be valuable allies rather than enemies. And if I refuse, then we will continue on our way and find someone else to talk to. But I think you are curious now, Commander. I think you want to understand what you have seen here today. Am I wrong? Zarketh looked around his bridge, at his officers who had served him for decades, at the tactical display showing his fleet in disarray, at the power readings that showed his ships had expended enormous amounts of energy, while the human vessel's reserves remained nearly full. He had lost this engagement, not in the traditional sense, perhaps. His fleet was still intact, but he had lost the initiative, lost his advantage, lost his certainty, and for a commander whose entire reputation was built on absolute victory, that was a defeat more profound than any destroyed ship. Very well, Captain Chen, I will meet with you. But I want guarantees. Of course, we will send a shuttle to the Worldbreaker. Our delegation will be unarmed, and will submit to any security measures you require. We come in peace, Commander. We have always come in peace. We just needed you to understand that peace is a choice we make, not a weakness you can exploit. The transmission ended. Zarketh stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, his crew waited for orders, waited for him to demonstrate the strength and certainty they had come to expect. But for the first time in 300 years, Commander Zarketh had no certainty to offer. He had encountered something new, something that defied all his experience and understanding. One human vessel had not destroyed his fleet. It had done something far more devastating. It had revealed that everything he thought he knew about warfare was incomplete, that his 300 years of victory had been against enemies who simply did not know how to truly fight, and now humanity was offering to teach him. Or perhaps to teach the entire galaxy. Zarketh was not sure which possibility frightened him more. The shuttle docked with the Worldbreaker exactly when Captain Chen said it would. Zarketh had arranged for maximum security. 24 armed guards lined the docking bay. Weapons scanners covered every angle. His personal security detail stood ready to respond to any threat. When the airlock opened, 3 humans emerged. Captain Chen led the way, flanked by 2 others. One was a tall male with dark skin and close-cropped hair, wearing the same blue uniform. The other was a shorter female with red hair and glasses, carrying a data tablet. None of them showed any reaction to the heavy military presence surrounding them. Zarketh stepped forward, his 4 arms held in a neutral position. This close, he could see details the viewscreen had not shown. Chen was shorter than he expected, barely reaching his shoulder. Her species seemed fragile, with thin limbs and soft skin, but her eyes held the same calm confidence he had seen during their confrontation. Commander Zarketh, Chen said, inclining her head slightly in what he recognized as a human gesture of respect. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "You gave me little choice," Zarketh replied. "You demonstrated superior technology and tactical awareness. Any commander who ignores such a display is a fool, and you are no fool. Your reputation is well deserved, even if the circumstances that built it were not as challenging as they could have been." It was a diplomatic way of calling him untested. Zarketh found himself appreciating the skill of it. "Come, we will speak in my private chambers. My guards will remain outside," Chen nodded. "Of course. Though I should introduce my companions. This is Commander Marcus Webb, my tactical officer, and Dr. Sarah Zhao, our xenocultural specialist." Webb gave a short nod. Zhao smiled warmly. Both seemed utterly unconcerned about being surrounded by armed aliens on a warship. Zarketh led them through the corridors of the World Breaker. Crew members stopped to stare as the humans passed. Word had already spread about the engagement. Everyone wanted to see the species that had stopped the legendary Commander cold. His chambers were spacious but sparse. A workstation, several displays showing fleet status, and a small area with seating designed for multiple species. Zarketh gestured for his guest to sit. They did so without hesitation. "So," Zarketh began, settling into his own chair. "You have my attention. Explain what humanity wants from the galaxy." Chen leaned forward slightly. "We want what every species wants, Commander. Security for our people, opportunities for trade and cultural exchange. A place in the galactic community where we are treated as equals rather than primitives or curiosities. And you believe demonstrating military superiority will achieve this? We believe that respect must be earned, and in this galaxy respect comes from strength. You yourself built your reputation on 300 years of unbroken victories. Would the hegemony have granted you such authority if you had lost half your battles?" Zarketh's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement. "No. But there is a difference between military strength and technological superiority. Your shields and tactics are impressive, but can you sustain them? Can you field enough ships to defend your interests? We have 67 vessels of comparable capability to the Perseverance," Webb said quietly. "Another 200 in various stages of construction. Within 5 years, we will have a fleet of 500 ships, all equipped with the technology you witnessed today." The numbers hit Zarketh like a physical blow. 500 ships with that kind of capability would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. "That is ambitious," he managed. "It is necessary," Chen replied. "We have studied galactic history, Commander. We know what happens to weak species. They are conquered, absorbed, or marginalized. We will not allow that to happen to humanity. We will enter the galactic stage from a position of strength, or we will not enter it at all." Zarketh studied her carefully. "You speak of defense, but such a fleet could easily become a tool of conquest." "It could," Chen agreed. "But it will not. Do you know why, Commander? Because humanity learned a very painful lesson in our history. We learned that conquest is easy, but holding what you have conquered is nearly impossible. We spent thousands of years trying to build empires, and every single one eventually collapsed. The cost of maintaining control through force always exceeds the benefits." Dr. Zhao spoke for the first time, her voice gentle but firm. "We have studied your species as well, Commander. The Crethean hegemony has existed for over 1,000 years, but it is not held together by conquest alone, is it? Your people offer protection, stability, trade advantages. The worlds you control mostly do so willingly, because they see the benefits of membership." Zarketh was surprised by her insight. "That is true. We rule through strength, but we maintain order through mutual benefit." "Exactly," Zhao continued. "That is what humanity wants to replicate. We want to offer protection to those who need it. We want to establish trade relationships that benefit all parties. We want to be seen as reliable allies rather than potential threats. But first, we need to prove we have something to offer beyond words and promises." "Which brings us back to today's demonstration," Zarketh said. "You used me as a test case. You knew my reputation would make humanity's point more effectively than any lesser target." "Yes," Chen admitted without hesitation. "We needed someone whose defeat would be noticed. Someone whose opinion would carry weight. And we needed someone who would understand what they were seeing and respond appropriately. You fit all those criteria. You assume I will speak favorably of humanity after being humiliated? We did not humiliate you, Commander. We challenged you. There is a difference. You took an engagement against an unknown enemy and adapted your tactics in real time. You recognized when continued aggression would be wasteful. You agreed to dialogue when it was offered. These are the actions of a wise commander, not a defeated one. Zarketh felt his secondary heart slow slightly. She was right, he realized. He had not been defeated in any traditional sense. He had simply encountered a situation that required a different approach. And he had been smart enough to recognize it. You are very skilled at managing perceptions, he observed. We have to be, Chen replied. Commander, can I be completely honest with you? Please do. Humanity is terrified. We are a young species entering a galaxy filled with civilizations thousands of years older than us. We have technology, yes, but we have no idea if it is enough. We have courage, but we do not know if that will matter. We are trying to project confidence while feeling completely overwhelmed by the enormity of what we are attempting. Her sudden vulnerability caught Zarketh off guard. This was not the supremely confident captain he had faced in battle. This was something more real, more honest. Then why risk confrontation, he asked. Why not approach more cautiously? Because caution is interpreted as weakness, Webb interjected. We ran simulations, studied historical examples. Every time a new species enters galactic society cautiously, they spend centuries being treated as second-class members. We do not have centuries to waste. We need to establish ourselves quickly, firmly, and in a way that ensures we are taken seriously. So you are gambling everything on making a strong first impression. We are gambling everything on being honest about our capabilities while demonstrating. We have no desire for conquest, Chen corrected. Commander, humanity did not develop these technologies to conquer the galaxy. We developed them to survive in it. Every advancement we made came from the fear that we might encounter a species that would not give us a chance to prove our worth. Zarketh stood and walked to one of his displays. It showed tactical readouts from the engagement. Frozen at the moment when human targeting locks had appeared on his elite squadron. You could have destroyed 6 of my best ships, he said quietly. Why did you not fire? Because we are not your enemy, Chen said simply. We never were. You assumed we were a threat because we refused to submit. But refusal to submit is not the same as aggression. We wanted you to see that humanity can be strong without being cruel, that we can defend ourselves without seeking to dominate others. And if I had not stopped, if I had continued to escalate, Chen was quiet for a moment before answering. Then we would have disabled your ships with minimal casualties and left. We had no intention of killing anyone today, Commander. Not you, not your crew, not anyone. That was the entire point of our defensive posture. We wanted to prove we could stop you without destroying you. Zarketh turned back to face her. Your weapon locks were perfect. You could have crippled my elite squadron in seconds. But you held fire and let me recall them. Why? Because we wanted you alive and thinking, not dead and martyred. A destroyed fleet would have made us enemies. A challenged but intact fleet gives us the opportunity to become something else. Allies, perhaps, or at least not adversaries. You are asking me to vouch for humanity, to tell the hegemony and the wider galaxy that your species should be welcomed as equals. We are asking you to tell the truth about what you witnessed today. Nothing more, nothing less. If you believe humanity is a threat, say so. If you believe we are potential allies, say that. We trust your judgment, Commander. That is why we chose you. Zarketh returned to his seat, his mind working through the implications. Everything Chen said made sense. Their tactics, their restraint, their diplomatic approach, it was all designed to achieve a specific goal, recognition and respect from the galactic community. But there was still something bothering him, something he had noticed during their confrontation, but had not fully processed until now. Captain Chen, he said slowly, during our engagement, your ship took sustained fire from 17 warships. Your shields held, yes, but they must have been under enormous strain. Yet you never once asked for assistance. You never called for reinforcements. You faced my entire fleet alone, despite knowing you had other ships available. Why? Chen met his gaze steadily. Because sending more ships would have turned a demonstration into a battle. One ship proving it could defend itself makes a point. A fleet engaging in combat creates casualties and enemies. We wanted to show we could stand our ground, not that we needed overwhelming force to do so. But you were at risk. If your shields had failed, your crew would have died. Yes, Chen agreed quietly. We were at risk. But that is what made the demonstration meaningful. If we had faced you without risk, without genuine stakes, it would have been meaningless. We needed you to see that humanity will stand firm even when alone and outnumbered, that we will not bend simply because we are threatened. Zarketh felt something shift in his understanding. These humans were not reckless. They had calculated the risks and accepted them because the potential reward was worth it. They had put themselves in danger to prove a point, and that point was simple. Humanity could not be intimidated. "You are either very brave or very foolish," he said finally. "I have not yet decided which." "Probably a bit of both," Chen admitted with a small smile. "But we are alive, you are alive, and we are talking. That was the goal. Everything else was just the path to get here." Zarketh sat back in his chair, his forearms folding across his chest. Outside his chambers, his fleet waited for orders. Across the galaxy, countless civilizations went about their business, unaware that the balance of power was shifting. And here, in his private quarters, 3 humans waited patiently for him to make a decision that would shape the future. For 300 years, Commander Zarketh had never hesitated. He had always known what to do, how to act, when to strike. But now, faced with this strange new species and their unusual approach to galactic politics, he found himself in unfamiliar territory. He was silent because he was thinking. Silent because he was reconsidering everything he thought he knew. Silent because for the first time in centuries, he was genuinely unsure of the right course of action. And somehow, Captain Sarah Chen seemed to understand that his silence was not defeat or confusion. It was consideration. It was respect. It was the sound of a legendary commander realizing that the galaxy he knew had just become infinitely more complex and interesting. After a long moment, Zarketh spoke. "Tell me about Earth." The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the incident. News traveled fast in the interconnected web of civilizations that spanned the galaxy. A human vessel had faced down Commander Zarketh's fleet and survived. More than survived. It had made the legendary warrior back down. The council chamber was a massive spherical room that could accommodate representatives from hundreds of species. Today it was packed. Delegates floated in zero gravity or sat in specialized stations designed for their particular biology. Holographic displays showed those who could not attend in person. At the center of the chamber, a raised platform held the council's senior members. 5 species that had been in space the longest, that carried the most influence, that shaped galactic policy. They looked down at Zarketh where he stood in the presentation area, and their expressions ranged from curiosity to concern to barely concealed anger. "Commander Zarketh," began Counselor Thrain, an elderly Viridian whose crystalline body refracted light in sharp patterns. "You will explain what occurred in the contested reaches, in detail." Zarketh had spent the past 3 days preparing for this moment. He had reviewed every sensor log, every tactical recording, every piece of data from the engagement. He had spoken at length with Captain Chen and her delegation, and he had wrestled with his own thoughts about what it all meant. "Honored counselors," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I encountered a human vessel designated the UESV Perseverance. Following standard protocols for the contested reaches, I ordered them to prepare for inspection. They refused. I escalated to a warning shot, which their shields absorbed without difficulty. I then ordered a full squadron attack. They survived without damage and without returning fire. You engaged a civilian vessel," Counselor Merithi interrupted. The Serpentine's scales rippled with disapproval. "You fired first upon a ship traveling through neutral space." "I did," Zarketh confirmed. "And I have no excuse for that action beyond the fact that I assumed, based on their technological classification, that a single cargo vessel could not pose a meaningful threat." "I was wrong." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Commander Zarketh admitting error was noteworthy in itself. "The human ship," Zarketh continued, "possesses defensive technology that exceeds anything currently available to any council member species. Their shields operate on principles that our science teams are still struggling to understand. But more significant than their technology was their approach to the engagement. He activated a holographic display, showing the tactical readouts from the battle. The assembled delegates leaned forward, studying the data. "The Perseverance never attempted to escape," Zarketh explained. "They never called for reinforcements. And most importantly, they never counterattacked despite having the capability to do so. At several points during the engagement, they could have destroyed multiple ships in my fleet. Instead, they simply defended themselves and waited for me to stop." "This is supposed to reassure us?" Counselor Thrain asked sharply. "That humanity has powerful weapons but chose not to use them?" That sounds like a threat, Commander. A demonstration of power designed to intimidate. With respect, Counselor, I believe you are wrong. I spent 3 days with Captain Chen and her delegation. I studied their history, their culture, their motivations. What I discovered was not a species interested in conquest, but one desperately trying to ensure their survival in a galaxy they barely understand. Zarketh pulled up new data on the display. Historical records from Earth, images of human cities, recordings of their wars and their peaceful achievements. Humanity is unique among spacefaring species, he said. Most races achieved interstellar travel through cooperative effort, through unity and shared purpose. Humans reached space while still divided into hundreds of competing nations. They developed advanced technology while simultaneously fighting wars among themselves. For 10,000 years, they refined the art of combat through constant practice. The chamber fell quiet as delegates absorbed this information. Several species shifted uncomfortably. The idea of a civilization at war with itself for millennia was disturbing to cultures that valued harmony and cooperation. But, Zarketh continued, his voice taking on a different tone, they also developed something else through those centuries of conflict. They learned when not to fight. They learned diplomacy, negotiation, compromise. They learned that victory through force is often hollow, and that lasting peace requires understanding your opponent. He paused, making sure he had their attention. Captain Chen told me something during our discussions that I found profound. She said that humanity spent 10,000 years learning how to fight each other, and then spent the last 200 years learning how to stop. They nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons. They came within hours of global annihilation, and they pulled back from the brink not through weakness but through strength of will. This is all very interesting, Counselor Vex rumbled. The massive Thorgonian's voice was like grinding stones. But it does not address the central question. What do humans want, and are they a threat to galactic stability? What they want is simple: recognition as equals. They want to trade, to share knowledge, to participate in galactic affairs without being treated as primitives or potential conquests. As for whether they are a threat, Zarketh hesitated, choosing his words carefully. That depends entirely on how we treat them. Explain, Counselor Thrain demanded. Humanity is offering a choice. They have demonstrated they possess military technology that makes them effectively unconquerable. They have shown they will not submit to intimidation or illegal demands. But they have also shown remarkable restraint. Despite having clear opportunities to inflict casualties, they chose not to. They want allies, not enemies, but they will settle for respect if alliance is not possible. Another delegate spoke up, a Qualtherian whose gaseous form shimmered inside a containment suit. You recommend we accept them into the council? Grant them full membership rights based on one demonstration? I recommend we engage with them seriously, Zarketh corrected. Send delegations. Open trade negotiations. Study their technology and culture. Treat them as we would any other established species. If we approach them with suspicion and hostility, we will create the very threat we fear. If we approach them with openness and respect, we may gain valuable allies. Or, Counselor Marithi hissed, we could be inviting wolves into our home. Commander, you have been manipulated. This entire situation was orchestrated by humans to create exactly this discussion. They attacked your pride and reputation to force you into this position. They did, Zarketh agreed calmly, and it was brilliantly done. But that does not make their capabilities any less real, or their intentions any less worthy of consideration. I have 300 years of military experience. I know manipulation when I see it, but I also know genuine strength, and I know when I have been outmaneuvered by a superior tactical mind. Humanity possesses both. The chamber erupted into discussion. Delegates argued among themselves, forming factions and alliances in real time. Some agreed with Zarketh's assessment. Others called for sanctions or military preparedness against the human threat. A few suggested immediate diplomatic outreach. Counselor Thrain called for silence. When the chamber quieted, she fixed Zarketh with a hard stare. Commander, you are asking us to fundamentally alter our approach to a new species based on one encounter. You who have built your reputation on strength and domination are now advocating for diplomatic engagement with a species that defeated you. They did not defeat me, Zarketh said firmly. They showed me that I had never truly been tested. Every battle I fought, every victory I achieved was against enemies who did not know how to truly fight. The humans revealed that my 300 years of experience were built on a foundation of incomplete knowledge. That is not defeat. That is education. He stepped forward, his voice rising with conviction. For centuries, I believed I was the greatest military commander in the galaxy, because I had never lost. But I was wrong. I was simply the best among those who had never faced a real challenge. Captain Chen and her crew showed me what genuine military excellence looks like, and rather than being ashamed of that revelation, I am grateful for it. Zarketh accessed another file on his display. Trade proposals, technology sharing agreements, cultural exchange programs, all drafted by the human delegation. Humanity is offering to share their defensive technology with any species that enters into formal alliance with them. They are proposing joint research initiatives on shield systems, energy distribution, and tactical analysis. They want to open Earth to diplomatic missions and cultural exchanges. They are offering everything we would expect from a species seeking peaceful integration. At what cost? Counselor Vex demanded. Respect, Zarketh said simply. That is all they ask. Treat them as equals. Recognize their sovereignty. Allow them full participation in galactic affairs. In return, they will contribute their knowledge, their perspective, and their protection to any who seek it. Protection, Counselor Marithi repeated. You mean their military might? I mean their willingness to stand between threats and those who cannot defend themselves. Counselors, I have studied humanity's history in detail. Yes, they fought among themselves for millennia. But do you know what else they did? They protected the weak. They defended those who could not defend themselves. In almost every human culture, there is a concept of heroism, defined not by conquest but by sacrifice for others. They admire those who risk themselves to protect innocence. Zarketh pulled up images of human history, soldiers throwing themselves on grenades to save comrades, firefighters running into burning buildings, civilians hiding refugees at great personal risk, acts of courage that had no strategic value, no tactical advantage, just pure willingness to sacrifice for others. This is who they are, Zarketh said quietly. Not perfect, not peaceful, but fundamentally driven by a desire to protect rather than conquer. I have seen this in their actions, in their restraint during our engagement, in their proposals for how to enter galactic society, and I believe we should give them a chance to prove themselves. The chamber was silent now. Delegates studied the images, read the proposals, considered the implications. Zarketh could see the calculations happening behind their eyes, weighing risks against benefits, fear against opportunity, the familiar against the unknown. Finally, Counselor Thrain spoke. Commander Zarketh, you will prepare a detailed report on human capabilities, technology, and intentions. We will review it thoroughly. In the meantime, we will open preliminary diplomatic channels with humanity. But, she raised a crystalline appendage for emphasis, we will also increase monitoring of human activities. If they show any signs of aggression or expansionist policies, we will respond accordingly. That is fair, Zarketh said, and I believe humanity will welcome such scrutiny. They have nothing to hide and everything to gain from transparency. You have changed, Commander, Counselor Vex observed. The Zarketh we knew would never have advocated for diplomacy over strength. The Zarketh you knew had never met an equal, he replied. Now I have, and I have learned that true strength is not the absence of challenge. It is the wisdom to recognize when force is unnecessary and when cooperation serves better than conflict. As the session concluded and delegates began departing, several approached Zarketh privately. Some offered support. Others expressed concern. A few accused him of being compromised or confused. He listened to them all with patience he had never possessed before. Because Captain Chen had taught him something valuable in those 3 days of discussion. She had shown him that listening was not weakness, that admitting ignorance was not failure, that changing one's mind when presented with new evidence was not inconsistency, but intelligence. Commander Zarketh, the undefeated warrior of the Krethian hegemony, had spent 300 years never questioning his assumptions. One human vessel had changed that, and in doing so it had changed everything. 6 months had passed since the encounter in the contested reaches. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound, like ripples spreading across still water. But nowhere were those changes more evident than in the unlikely friendship between Commander Zarketh and Captain Sarah Chen. Zarketh stood in the observation dome of Earth's orbital station Unity 1, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly beneath him. It was his third visit to Earth, and each time he found himself more fascinated by this world that had produced such a remarkable species. Beautiful, is it not? Chen's voice came from behind him. She floated over in the zero gravity, moving with the easy grace of someone born to space. It is chaotic, Zarketh replied, but his tone held admiration rather than criticism. So much water, so many different climate zones. Your world seems designed to produce conflict and cooperation in equal measure. That is probably why we turned out the way we did. Chen agreed, settling beside him. Earth never let us get comfortable. We had to adapt constantly, work together to survive, but also compete for limited resources. It made us flexible. Below them, transport ships moved between Earth and the growing network of human colonies. In 6 months, humanity had established formal diplomatic relations with 30 civilizations. Trade agreements were being negotiated. Cultural exchange programs were flourishing. And most significantly, human defensive technology was being shared with allied species. The Council has approved full membership for humanity, Zarketh said. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. You will have a seat at the table within the month. Chen smiled. Thanks in large part to your advocacy. You know the conservative factions call you the traitor commander now. I am aware. I'm also aware that the same factions called me the butcher commander before I met you. I prefer this new title. At least it suggests I'm capable of growth. How are things with the hegemony? Zarketh's mandibles clicked in what Chen had learned to recognize as his equivalent of a shrug. Complex. I have officially retired from military command. The High Council accepted my resignation without protest. I suspect they were relieved. My presence was becoming uncomfortable for those who prefer the old ways. I am sorry, Chen said quietly. I never wanted to cost you your career. You did not cost me anything. You gave me something far more valuable, perspective. For 300 years, I defined myself by conquest and domination. Now I have the opportunity to define myself differently. The hegemony has appointed me as chief ambassador to humanity. I believe they hope I will be less dangerous in a diplomatic role. And will you be? Probably not. But dangerous in a different way. I intend to push for reform within the hegemony, to advocate for the kind of cooperative defense agreements humanity has proposed, to challenge the old assumptions about strength and power. He turned to face her. You have created a troublemaker, Captain. Good, Chen replied with a grin. The galaxy needs more troublemakers. Too many civilizations have grown comfortable with the status quo. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Unity 1's command center. Chen's expression grew serious as she listened, then nodded sharply. Commander, we have a situation. The Outer Rim monitoring stations have detected a massive fleet entering the galaxy from extragalactic space. Unknown configuration. They are not responding to hails. Zarketh felt his combat instincts surge to life. How massive? Over 300 vessels. Some of them are larger than anything in our databases. They are heading toward inhabited systems in the Caltheron sector. The Council? Already convening emergency session. But Commander, they are asking for humanity's help. They want our ships deployed immediately. This was the moment that would define everything. The moment when humanity would prove whether their promises of protection were genuine or just another form of political manipulation. Zarketh watched Chen's face carefully, looking for signs of hesitation or calculation. He saw neither. Only determination. Mobilize the fleet, Chen ordered. All available vessels to rally point Gamma 7. Full defensive loadout. And patch me through to the Perseverance. Within an hour, 67 human vessels had assembled in orbit around Earth. The Perseverance held position at the center of the formation, with Chen back aboard her own ship. Zarketh had been offered transport to a safe location, but he had refused. Instead, he was aboard the Worldbreaker, which had joined the human fleet as part of a combined defense force. For the first time in 300 years, Commander Zarketh was not in command. He was an observer, a consultant, a reminder of the old ways standing beside the new, and he found he was content with that role. The combined fleet made the jump to the Caltheron sector in coordinated precision. What they found there made even experienced officers pause. The unknown fleet was massive, each vessel bristling with weapons and pulsing with unfamiliar energy signatures. They had already begun attacking the outer colonies, though their assault seemed more like testing than genuine conquest. Analysis? Chen requested from her command chair. Commander Webb studied the tactical displays. They are probing our defenses, testing response times and weapon capabilities. Classic reconnaissance in force, which means they are smart, Chen observed. They learn before they commit. Sound familiar, Marcus? Just like us, Webb agreed. Chen opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, formation Delta 7. We are going to show these newcomers that this galaxy is defended. But remember your training. We defend, we do not destroy. We demonstrate overwhelming capability, then we offer communication. Let's give them the same choice we gave Commander Zarketh. On the Worldbreaker's bridge, Zarketh listened to Chen's orders and felt something like pride. She had learned from their encounter and was now applying those lessons. This was not just about humanity proving itself. It was about establishing a new paradigm for how to handle unknown threats. The human fleet moved forward in perfect coordination. Their shields overlapped, creating a defensive wall that protected not just themselves but the civilian stations behind them. When the unknown fleet opened fire, testing the defenses, the human ships absorbed the damage without flinching. Then instead of counterattacking, they broadcast on all frequencies in hundreds of languages. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of sovereign space. We are the defensive forces of the Galactic Council. We do not wish to engage in hostilities, but we will protect these systems. Stand down and open communications. There is no benefit in conflict. The unknown fleet hesitated. Their ships halted their advance, clearly reassessing the situation. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then finally a response came through. The language was incomprehensible at first, but the translation algorithms worked quickly. Within minutes, communication was established. The unknown fleet identified themselves as the Korvath Expeditionary Force, an exploratory mission from a distant galaxy. They had entered this space seeking resources and new territories, expecting little resistance based on their experiences in their own galaxy. They had not expected to encounter a unified defensive force using technology they could not easily overcome. Negotiations took 3 days. Chen led the discussions with support from Galactic Council diplomats and input from Zarketh, who provided insights into military psychology and honor-based cultures. The Korvath were not evil or aggressive by nature. They were simply used to being the strongest force in any encounter. The human defensive capabilities had forced them to reconsider their approach. In the end, an agreement was reached. The Korvath would establish peaceful relations with the Galactic Council. They would trade technology and knowledge rather than taking by force. In return, they would be given access to resources and habitable worlds in unclaimed regions of space. And humanity would serve as guarantors of the peace, their ships acting as neutral observers to ensure both sides honored the agreement. When the crisis was resolved and the combined fleet began dispersing, Zarketh requested a private meeting with Chen aboard the Perseverance. They met in her ready room, a small office off the main bridge. You handled that remarkably well, Zarketh said, as he settled into a chair designed to accommodate his larger frame. The Korvath could have become enemies. Instead, they are potential allies, all because you offered them the same choice you offered me. I learned from the best, Chen replied. You taught me that strength without wisdom is just brutality, and wisdom without strength is just philosophy. We need both. I taught you nothing. You already knew these things. You simply applied them in a way I had never considered. Chen poured drinks for both of them, a human tradition Zarketh had come to appreciate. Commander, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you regret it? Everything that happened, your reputation, your career, the way your life changed. Zarketh considered the question carefully. He thought about his 300 years of unbroken victories, his legendary status, his absolute certainty in his own superiority. Then he thought about the last 6 months, the conversations with Chen, the diplomatic challenges, the opportunity to help reshape galactic policy, the satisfaction of seeing his advocacy actually prevent conflict rather than create it. I regret nothing, he said finally. You gave me something I did not even know I was missing. Purpose beyond conquest, victory beyond domination, the chance to be remembered not for how many I defeated, but for how many I helped protect. That is beautiful, Commander, but also terrifying in its implications. How so? Because it means that one encounter, one single moment of genuine challenge was enough to completely change your worldview. What does that say about the galaxy we live in? How many other commanders, leaders, and civilizations are operating on incomplete assumptions simply because they have never been truly tested? It was a profound question, and one Zarketh had been wrestling with for months. It says that we have been lucky. Lucky that our conflicts have been limited. Lucky that no truly existential threat has emerged to challenge us. And lucky that when one did appear, in the form of humanity, you chose cooperation over conquest. We almost did not make that choice, Chen admitted. There were factions within human government that wanted to use our technology to establish dominance, to become the new power players in galactic politics. They argued that we should strike first, establish control, ensure our survival through strength. What changed their minds? The same thing that changed yours. Someone asked a simple question. What kind of galaxy do we want to live in? One based on fear and force, or one based on mutual respect and cooperation? When framed that way, the choice became obvious. Zarketh raised his glass in a human gesture he had learned. To obvious choices that take centuries to see, Chen touched her glass to his. To new friends who help us see them. They drank in comfortable silence. Outside the viewports, the stars burned with ancient light, and somewhere in the distance, new civilizations were making first contact, establishing trade routes, and learning to coexist. The galaxy was changing, evolving, growing more interconnected and complex with each passing day, and at the heart of it all was a simple truth that one human vessel had revealed. Strength without compassion was tyranny. Compassion without strength was vulnerability. But when combined, when wielded by those who understood that true power came from knowing when to fight and when to offer a hand in friendship, they became something greater than either alone. Zarketh looked at Captain Chen and saw not just a skilled commander or a diplomatic genius. He saw the embodiment of a principle that would reshape the galaxy. That the greatest victories were those that created no losers, only allies. Captain, he said quietly, when the history of this era is written, they will speak of the moment humanity entered the galactic stage. They will analyze your tactics, study your technology, debate your methods. But I hope they will also understand the most important thing you accomplished. What is that? You proved that evolution is not just biological. It is philosophical. You showed us that we could be better than we were, that we could learn, adapt, and grow, that 300 years of certainty could be transformed by 3 days of genuine conversation. One human vessel changed everything not because it was more powerful than what came before, but because it offered something better. Chen smiled, though her eyes were distant. You know what the hardest part of all this was, Commander? What? Convincing ourselves that we deserved a place in the galaxy, that we were not too violent, too primitive, too divided to be worthy of respect. We spent decades watching other civilizations and thinking we would never measure up. It took meeting someone like you, someone with such an impressive reputation, to realize that we were not the problem. The standards we were measuring ourselves against were incomplete. And now we know that the galaxy does not need perfect civilizations. It needs honest ones. Ones willing to admit their flaws while working to overcome them. Ones that understand strength comes not from never failing, but from how you respond when you do fail. That is what humanity brings to the galactic community. Not perfection, but persistence. Not certainty, but adaptability. Not domination, but partnership. Zarketh stood, his forearms spreading in a gesture of deep respect. Captain Sarah Chen, it has been an honor to know you, to learn from you, to have my entire understanding of the universe challenged by you. I entered our first meeting as the undefeated Commander Zarketh. I leave this one as your friend. And I believe that is a far greater achievement than any military victory. Chen stood as well, extending her hand in the human gesture of friendship. Zarketh took it carefully, mindful of his greater strength. The honor is mine, Commander. You could have responded to our challenge with escalation. You could have let pride override wisdom. Instead, you listened. You learned. You changed. That takes courage that no amount of military victories can teach. As Zarketh prepared to leave, Chen added one final thought. You know what I think the real lesson of our encounter was? Tell me. That silence is not always defeat or surrender. Sometimes silence is the sound of someone's worldview expanding, of assumptions being challenged, of growth beginning. You fell silent that day not because you had nothing to say, but because you had too much to think about, and that silence changed everything. Zarketh paused at the door, looking back at the human captain who had so thoroughly disrupted his life and made it immeasurably richer in the process. Yes, he agreed. One human vessel changed everything. But not through weapons or shields or tactical brilliance, impressive as those were. It changed everything because it forced an old warrior to stop talking and start listening. And in that silence, in that moment of genuine reflection, the future was born. He departed, leaving Chen alone in her ready room. She turned to look out the viewport at the vast expanse of space beyond. Somewhere out there, more challenges awaited, more species to meet, more conflicts to resolve, more opportunities to prove that humanity's approach to galactic citizenship was not just effective, but necessary. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The girl from Shanghai who had dreamed of the stars had helped reshape the galaxy. Not through conquest or glory, but through the simple act of refusing to back down while simultaneously refusing to cause unnecessary harm. One vessel, one encounter, one commander willing to listen. Sometimes that was all it took to change everything.